And as Mike said, I'm going to tell you what lawful rebellion is, because it's a question that people ask, and you get a vacant stare. So it's important that we know what lawful rebellion is, and also how we're going to achieve it through alternative governments. But before I do that, I'd just like to make an observation. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is in a mess. Wars, crime, greed, perversion, deceit, lies, betrayal and corruption. And that's just amongst Tony Blair's circle of friends. The world does not have to be like this. We've got solutions to the problem. It's just about getting the right leaders in place. Disease, famine, disparity, poverty, cruelty, addiction, unemployment, moral decline, selfishness, apathy, ignorance, fear, despair, and depression. We all recognize these as the dominant influences in the world that we live in today. It is worrying and it's depressing. We have billionaires living on the same planet in which children are starving. That's not right. How can they justify it? They can't. They just don't care. And the problem is that we have no proper way of holding our leaders to account. What this lot have done to us is not just incompetence, it is criminal. And do you know whose fault it is? It's our fault. We simply haven't had the courage to stand up to these people. They lie to us, they deceive us, and they betray us. And what do we go and do? We vote for them. If we continue to vote for this lot, then we are feeding the decay. Wake up, people. Stop voting for them. Deny them the legitimacy, and the world will start to change. And if anybody tells me that there are one or two MPs in the batch that are good folk, let me tell you respectfully this, that when you live in a house and you've got one or two bricks that are sound and the rest are crumbling, you should move. The house is crumbling and will fall down. It needs to be demolished. Here are some good ideas for you. Compassion, consideration, sharing, caring, happiness, honesty, integrity, health, education, values, and love. We have got to get rid of the fifth columnist first before we can do all that. We're working on that. We have all of those qualities in abundance, but we don't have the political infrastructure in which we can share them. We keep coming up against the wall of indifference and self-interest. Now, the British Constitution Group is not here to sell a new ideal. Our answer to the problem is simply to change the political infrastructure, to get in place leaders who will lead. If my son and daughter was in the army and there were a prime minister that told lies, or a prime minister that would not provide them with the right equipment to protect them, then I would want a system that would ensure that those people were put in prison for the rest of their lives. Not being able to hold our politicians properly to account is the essence of the problem. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what the British Constitution Group is all about. So let me give you a background about the British Constitution Group. We were formed for the purpose of reasserting the Constitution and the rule of law. We want to explain to people what the Constitution is and why the British people have an irrevocable right to govern themselves. Our Constitution is our safeguard against tyranny and oppression. It guarantees individual rights and freedoms, and it makes sure that the government serves the people and not the people serves the government. Our Constitution is the only way in which we can hold our politicians to account. It is the only protection that we've got, and our politicians have set about to destroy it deliberately. It is a blatant power grab. Jack Straw, a self-confessed Marxist, and Tony Blair, a Fabian in favour of a one-world government, have actually set about shredding our Constitution bit by bit, stage by stage, since they've been in power. I've got an essay here by Jack Straw. It's available on the internet, and it's called Modernising Magna Carta. Now, most of you will probably appreciate what the word modernising means from a new Labour government. It means destroy. Okay? They modernised the House of Lords. They destroyed the House of Lords. They are modernising everything, and they are destroying everything. Now, if you want to read Jack Straw's interpretation of what our Constitution is all about, it's available online on the Ministry of Defence. It's an essay in distortion, fabrication, and downright lies. This is a Marxist telling us what our Constitution is about. It is exactly the opposite of what I think it's about. I'd like to read something to you. It was actually a speech by Oliver Cromwell when he dissolved the Long Parliament. And it, of course, refers to the parliamentarians at the time. And I want you to see if it actually reminds you of anything. It is high time for me to put an end to your sitting in this place, which you have dishonoured by your contempt of its virtue, and defiled by your practice of every vice. Ye are a factious crew, and enemies to all good government. Ye are a pack of mercenary wretches, and would like Esau sell your country for a mess of pottage, and like Judas betray your God for a piece of silver. Is there a single virtue now remaining amongst you? Is there one vice you do not possess? Ye have no more religion than my horse. God is your gold. Which of you have not bartered your conscience for bribes? Is there a man amongst you that has the least care for the good of the commonwealth? Ye sordid prostitutes, have you not defiled the sacred place and turned the Lord's temple into a den of thieves? By your immoral principles and wicked practices, ye are grown intolerably odious to the whole nation. You were deputed here by the people to give grievances redressed. Are you yourselves gone? So take away that shining bauble there and lock up the doors. In the name of God, go. Our Constitution sets out clearly that our politicians act contrary to the Constitution and the rule of law. We have a right to declare ourselves in lawful rebellion. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what we're going to do. We've asked our politicians to respect our Constitution. They have ignored us. We've asked the police and the judiciary to uphold the law. They will not do so. We've written to the Queen, affidavits to the Queen. She will not reply. We do not know why she will not reply. We're assuming that the mail is intercepted. We have had replies from the Ministry of Justice and from the communist Jack Straw. Nobody is listening to us. But our views do count. And they are going to count. And they're going to find out how. And I don't mean at the next elections not voting for them, although that's the one move. I believe by lawful rebellion. But we would be presumptuous in the British Constitution Group. Can you hear that, Carol?
Yeah, can I just say something?
Yeah, please.
Don't vote for them, but get us to vote for somebody.
Well, yeah, of course. Well done, Carol. It's a case of not voting for the usual tribe. As I say, we would be presumptuous in the British Constitution Group if we were to declare that we knew your minds. And so I'm going to propose that by a vote of hands, this room indicates whether or not we, the British people, think we should vote for ourselves. Sorry, we should govern ourselves. Could I have a show of hands? Who does not think we should govern ourselves? That's unanimous. Whenever we ask that question, that's what happens. It's fundamental to the British situation now, is that we all want to govern ourselves, but we don't. So we have to move on. The British Constitution Group is holding a conference every month for the rest of the year, and our objective is to get 1 million people signed up to Lawful Rebellion. We don't know whether it take us 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. We're just going to keep going. But you people have got a part to play. What we would ask you to do is, when you leave here today, if you're not already members of the British Constitution Group, to sign up, become a member, and pass the word. Talk about governing ourselves. A lot of the stuff that we all know about and what we're aware of is beyond people's comprehension at this point in time. But they do understand that the simple reality that we should govern ourselves, and that's what we've moved on to. But importantly, the Lawful Rebellion is always going to be peaceful. So moving on, what is Lawful Rebellion and alternative governance? I've got a series of slides which I'll talk you through. Can you hear me back there? Can you hear me? But, okay, I thought this is a bit of a distraction, this mic, but never mind. Okay. All right, so Lawful Rebellion. What is alternative governance? We need to ask 5 basic questions. What is lawful rebellion? Can it be justified, and is it lawful? What is alternative governance? How might it be implemented, and who is going to do it? It's a frame of mind. It's about saying no. It's about saying enough is enough. It's the coming together of a significant number of people and asserting our authority to govern ourselves. It's the withdrawal of our consent to be governed by this or any government that will not uphold our constitution. It's our right to refuse to pay fixed penalty charges, unreasonable speeding and parking fines, and the BBC licence fee. I'm not suggesting that we have a right to go around speeding and parking where we want. We are responsible people, and we will respect common sense. But we know that this is just a revenue-raising issue. It's corporatisation of statutes, and we are being held for mugs. It is our right to withhold payment of taxes when they're being used corruptly and paying for things that we do not want and we do not need. It's a right to take back control of our affairs and to rebalance things the way we want them, okay, in our favour. If you ask that question in any hall, who's happy with government? Nobody is happy with government. What are we doing with them? It's our right to say to the political establishment, you've had your chance. Your system doesn't work. We're going to do it our way. It's about boycotting the manifestly corrupt institution of these 3 major parties, the 3 main political parties. It is the defiance of the self-appointed elite who have ordained that they will rule us. The European elite, the UK elite, who say, we are your rulers. Not that they govern us, but they are our rulers. It is about reordering society in a way that we know it should be constructed, with fairness and justice at its heart. We get constant stories of people who've just, the degrees of injustice are just unbelievable. It sets in motion a series of actions to take back control. It's the implementation of the justice for the people and by the people. It is not a silver bullet. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in stages, bit by bit. And the first part of that stage is to build our numbers. But it's not only a right, it's a duty. In the same way that we inherited a free and independent nation, it is our duty to pass over to our children and their children a free and independent nation. Not just a right, it's a duty. But is it a romantic notion or is it a pragmatic solution? And when it comes down to the ground, it's all right talking about these things, but if you can only talk about it, it's romance. If you can do it, it's a pragmatic solution. And I can tell you that when there are very few of us, it's just romance. But when there's a million of us, it is a pragmatic solution. And that's why we've got to build our numbers. It's justified, it is lawful, and it's peaceful. Their plan has been to make us to serve their interest. Lawful rebellion is our plan to make them serve ours. Can it be justified? Treason has been committed, there is no doubt. Neither the judiciary nor the police will uphold the law. We've asked them to do so. We've given them the documentation. We've proven the point. They will not uphold the law. And we have written to the Queen, and we do not get any responses. Lawful rebellion is now our only remedy, and is therefore justified. I'll make these key points, and it's something you need to think about. But there is no lawful compulsion to accept their system of governance. We just accept it. We just assume that they're right. That when a group of people vote for that lot, we have got to obey them. Government by consent of the people, right? That's what it's about. It's government by consent. But we are withdrawing our consent, and it is our right to do so. If they try to force their governance upon us, that is a tyranny. Another important point is we have no desire or intention of taking over their system, because they would accuse us of sedition. Our position, of course, is that as far as we're concerned, if you want it, you can have it. We're going to make our own arrangements. Will they try and force their authority upon us? If there's a few of us, yes, they will. But when we're 1 million strong, no, they won't. So what is alternative governance? How does it manifest itself? It starts by the setting up of self-sufficient communities. We bring together small groups and we start expanding them. And when I say a small group, we start with one person. And we've already started doing that. That's our first point of contact. That first point of contact builds to 2 or 3 people. And those 3 people build to 10. The process then is that that small group of 10 people communicate with the nearest group of 10. We have a map online. I know Mike is doing work to the internet site at the moment, but if you go online, you'll see a map, and you'll see that there's a whole series of first points of contact there. And the idea is that you can communicate with that first point of contact and start to build an organization. We suggest that you adopt a pub. The idea is that you can go and meet in a pub, 2 or 3 of you, and just leave leaflets at the local. And also, it's a place where you can say to people, we meet there every month on a Monday or whatever, so people can sort of remember that and know where you are. Okay. So the process is by building the groups, we start to build organizations that can communicate and organize ourselves. But essentially, what we have got to do now, lawful rebellion, the process that we're in at the moment, is to build numbers. We start building a profile of the groups. What businesses we're in, what services we are able to offer each other, and we just start building the database. We'll set up our own trading network eventually. Again, the internet site is designed where you can put up that you are a plumber, electrician, a teacher, so on and so forth. So the idea is to start establishing a network of known people who can do all these things for us. Eventually, as we get bigger and bigger and bigger, we will be able to supply to our own communities all of the resources that we need. 2 systems can operate in parallel. It's unusual, but it's perfectly viable. We recognize that as our new communities are developing, we have the burden of re-establishing and restructuring the infrastructure, putting together the all of the databases, etc. But one of the big benefits is that we do not have the financial burden. Okay, so we are progressing towards a completely independent scenario. Eventually, we start making arrangements for our own rubbish collection and recycling. We take out insurance for our fire and ambulance cover. We will negotiate with the council to pay those items which we wish to pay for. We will not pay for unelected assemblies. We will not pay for EU junkets, and we will decide what we will pay for. We will have the power to do that. So we will progressively stop paying our council tax. And again, within each community, the decision will be, we are prepared to pay 75%, and we will do this ourselves. We're then prepared to pay 50%, but we will do this ourselves. Now we're not prepared to pay anything, okay? And we will organize everything ourselves. And when we are paying for everything, I estimate that most of our council tax fees are about 3 times higher than they need to be. I'm not going to discuss the pros and cons of pensions and all the rest of it, because people working for the council tax are mostly good people. People working for the council are mostly good people. So we have got to ensure that as our system develops, we actually provide employment for them as well. So it's not a case of scrapping a system. It is a case of gradually taking over a system, okay? So it's a process. There are going to be tussles with authorities as we start to assert our rights. We anticipate that. Some we're going to win and some we're going to lose. Again, that's a process. What we keep challenging them, and as long as we keep challenging them, eventually we start to win the battles. We wear them down. We already have a number of successes. I've been in court about 5 times now, and I wasn't going to discuss my activities because it's work in progress, but a few people have suggested I do tell you exactly what I have done. I do not pay council tax. I do not pay business rates. And they can't touch me. I've been able to send the bailiffs away, send the council away. I want to pay my tax. I have said to the council, if you want me to pay my tax, I'm happy to do so, providing I can sit down and agree a contract between you. A contract between me and between you that I agree with. Just don't send me a bill and demand money, okay? I've written to the council and I said, by what authority do you think that you can tell me what to do? I'm waiting for that reply. And that is lawful rebellion. That is about saying, look, I am a free man and I'm prepared to make my contribution to society in a fair way that's fair for me and it's fair to the community. And I make this point that we have lost sight about what community is all about. We now have 2 communities. We have their community in which they feed off us, and we have our community in which we're on a treadmill. And lawful rebellion is getting off that treadmill. We are going to have our own banking and funding arrangements. We're going to have our own regulations. We're going to have our local tax system, our own sheriff, our own courts, our own magistrates and judges, our own peace officers, and our own unelected representatives. Okay? And that process will take a while. That process will happen and start as people come on board and start to realize there is a different way of doing this. There is a way in which we can set up independent organizations and start to take back control. And at some point in time, they will want to negotiate with us because we're going to be too powerful. Every member will eventually have their own internal bank account. Now, we're working on a system of banking that will actually allow us to actually create our own currency. Now, does everybody know about how money is created from nothing here? Just let's have a show of hands. Okay. Look, I tell you what, if you'd asked that, how educated are we? Okay. If you'd asked that question 2 or 3 years ago, that would have been blank stares. We are getting smarter and smarter, and I tell you what, that scares them. The cat is out the bag, and the solution to the problem is about getting more and more people to realize what's happening. And we're going to do it by example. We're going to show people, well, we're doing that ourselves, and say, well, how are you doing that? It's easy. We made the decision to go into lawful rebellion. And if you think about it logically now, if people see what we're doing, right, if they see and understand exactly what's happening to us, they will say, we want to be that. I'm in my own business. I do not fill any income tax forms. I don't fill any government forms whatsoever. They all go in the bin. I am a free man. Health and safety knocked on my door, and they said, can we come in? I said, no, you can't. And they said that we are entitled to come in. I said, no, you're not, because I'm not going to let you in. She said, well, we can prosecute you. I said, go for it. The lady was very upset. She didn't understand how I could stand there and say, you're not in charge of me. This is a young girl of about 23 that wants to come and tell me, a master mariner, okay, about health and safety. There's nothing she can tell me about health and safety. Okay, I'm my own man. She wrote me a nasty letter.
Write a nasty letter back.
I just threw it in the bin. We eventually be powerful enough to stop paying our council tax. And those of us are prepared to do so, we can then move on and not pay PAYE or VAT. We are not suggesting anybody do that, because it is, when we start going down that road, we have got to have our act in order. We've got to be able to understand what we're taking on. They are not going to roll over, right? The process that we're going to use is through infiltration. We'll get people inside their government to recognize that what we're doing is right and just, and slowly but surely their system will start to crumble. Okay, so there is a strategy, there is a plan. We will tread very carefully until we are 1 million strong. We will make our plans and we'll bide our time, and we'll organize ourselves in small groups so they can't pick off key people. And that's the whole point about the groups, setting up the groups. If one of us is invited to go to court, as I have been, it's always best to turn up in numbers. The approach that the judges and magistrates have when you're on your own is quite different to when you're there with 10 people. Okay, but the people who will go there as observers. That the job is not to disrupt the court. We find that most of the magistrates are oblivious to what's going on. They're polite and they are helpful, and we are polite back. That's the way it works. Being hard-nosed and argumentative is not constructive. It's being reasoned and knowing your stuff that actually makes the impression. In recent cases I've had with the magistrates were listening intently to what I was saying, and the legal advisor stood up and stopped the court hearing and raced them out there. So they've actually marched the magistrates out. They do not want me talking to the magistrates, but they can't stop me. When we turn up to the magistrates' court, progressively what we're going to say to them is that they have no authority over us. We say we're here as a courtesy, okay, because we've been invited to their courts, but they have no authority over us, and we're happy to explain why. We'll always be peaceful. So this is a flavor. We're just giving you a flavor of how this whole thing progresses from here. It's important to understand that we will set the agenda. In the past, it's been their agenda. We've been on the chain. They pull, we follow. Okay? Doesn't work like that anymore. In lawful rebellion, we set the agenda. We work to our time frame, the issues that we want to raise or challenge them on, when and where we want to do so. We will dictate the time, the place, and the issues. We do not and will not put ourselves in conflict with the existing law enforcement authorities. Okay? We merely have to explain to them that we are implementing our own authority. We are restricting their authority, taking away the power to act against us. And we will have the numbers to assert our authority. And that again is important. It's the numbers. One organization I think you'll all be familiar with, okay, says leading beyond authority and thinking outside the box. Common purpose, we have been listening. We are very clear, and I make this point, that we are offering alternative governance, okay? There's no rule book that says we can't. It's as simple as that. Whether they like it or not, they have to understand that governance is by consent, and we are withdrawing our consent. We have no desire to overthrow this government or any other government. As I said before, our philosophy is, if you want them, you can have them. We'll also show through example that our system is better, and people will see exactly how our system is working. There is only one way, however, that we can actually implement alternative governance, and that is through the numbers. We need 1 million people. We need 1 million people to sign up to Lawful Rebellion, and when we have that million people, that's when it starts to happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to join us. If you go online to our website, you can sign up to Lawful Rebellion. There's nothing to do other than spread the word and try and get people to join up. That's the job in hand at the moment. Progressively, there's more and more to do, but as I say, the most important ingredient is numbers. We ask people to make a contribution because we have to fund what we're trying to do. This is now almost a full-time job for a number of us. Although I have my own business, it is desperately lacking because I don't spend enough time. So we desperately need to get as many people on board, and we ask that you make a small contribution. £1 a month, £2 a month, £5 a month, £10, whatever you can afford, okay? But essentially that's the essence. Any questions? That gentleman was there first, go on.
How far off million are we then?
Okay. We are growing steadily every day. We have a policy is that we do not talk numbers, okay? We ask each individual group to work independently and autonomous. We ask them not to share information to other people. Anything that we know and share amongst the crowd, they will know. We want to keep, our numbers quiet, okay? But we are making progress. That's all you need to know, okay? Sir, sorry.
You know, when you say set an example, that's where they might start to try and use dirty tricks again to try to frame you or lie, some way, or some underhanded way, might try to make you look stupid in some way.
Yeah, you are right. We know that as we get bigger and more powerful, that they will try everything in their book to discredit us, call us liars, call us thieves, and throw it. We do anticipate that. But what we're doing is deliberately. We're setting up a network of people. There are hundreds of people out there who are leaders. Okay, you can't bump them all off, discredit them all, and they don't know who they are. Okay, there's one or two of us at the moment who are more high profile, and we anticipate. We've already had it. Brian has had a few nasty comments made about him. We just water off a duck's back. We anticipate it. Most of the people in the groups understand and know what's going on, so it doesn't really work. Madam.
Can you join without going online?
Yes, you can. I mean, if you write to the Plymouth office, the reason that we're doing it online is because administratively it makes our lives much easier. The communication-wise, it is the way of the future. We can get a message round in an hour, okay? And within a day, we can cause havoc in a day. What we're going to do is we're going to use the internet to communicate what we want people to do on a specific day. So in the future, we'll be able to close the banks down in a day by people literally going in. And they've done this before. People have gone into banks and they've formed large queues, okay? I have been in a bank myself and caused amazing disruption. I've been into a bank where they've had one teller on and 20 people in a row. So I've walked in the middle of the bank and said, can we have more tellers on? There's 20 people in the queue here. And I've just stood there and shouted. And I tell you what, they move. One person can make a difference, that I can promise you. And with a million of us, they cannot resist. Okay, sir.
Roger, you say you run your own business.
Yeah.
Presumably the finances associated with that, do you use a current banking system?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Could that cause a problem?
Yes, it could. Yeah, I mean, they they control and own us, lock, stock and barrel, right? That is why we have got to create our own banking system. Yeah.
Is there anything in the offing that
Yes.
new bank
Yes. Yeah.
which is coming up at all?
It is being constructed. It will be put in place. We will have our own banking system. We will be totally in control of our own affairs. When we go down that road, I mean, I'm not going to tell you too much about how that works because we don't want them to know, okay? But what I can tell you, I can assure you, it's very clever, okay, and it's very viable, and it will happen in due course.
No, can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
For those who work within the system, and as many of us do, we get taxed at source.
Yes, yeah.
How can we stop that?
Okay, there's nothing you can do about that at the moment, okay? But what will eventually happen is that we will get groups of businesses who will be on side. And then we will tell those groups of businesses, as of this day, you now can stop paying your tax. PAYE. And we will introduce a system. Now, you can only do that with numbers. Now, I want you to imagine a scenario in which you have got 100 businesses in a community who all stop paying tax like that, okay? Now, you've got the legal issues, you've got the pros and cons, you've got a whole series of things that you've got to deal with. All of that has got to be in place before we go down that road. So there's a lot of work to do, but we're working towards that aim. The bottom line is, they use our money to control us. That's their lifeline. It is all about money. We have got to control the money. So, and in order to control the money, we need the people to do that. So we start with the people.
Have you got anybody within the legal system that is favourable to this cause and is helping this cause?
We've got people in the legal system, in the hospital system, we've got people in every system going, okay? And these people are coming to us and saying, now we've seen what's going on, we want to help. And we said, all right, you be our ears and our eyes. And progressively, what we're doing now with the conventions is the conventions we're bringing together are specific, they're focused specifically on putting together areas of control for education, for health, and so on and so forth. So we're starting to build that governance system up, okay? So.
Well, you talked about before about that we're going to set up our own court system and everything. So
Yeah.
how will that be implemented, and how will we have deterrence to stop certain crimes? And also, how are we going to actually change the system from, let's say, the woman who's, let's say, on benefits, is feeding her family, who mistakenly, right, yes, takes food, right, yes, from a supermarket, gets arrested for shoplifting, for pinching food. How are we going to change that? How are we going to change that whole system?
Say that again.
Yes.
Okay. Again, how do you stop crime? Okay. If you have your own police officers and you have your own community, I can promise you that when you have responsive police or police officers, people will not commit crimes against you. Now, the extension of having your own court system is you eventually do need your own jail system. Okay, so you can introduce penalties. There are different ways to deal with different problems, and mostly it's not locking people up, but it's actually talking to people and telling them about consequences. I've got 3 children, okay, and as my children got to teenagers, they were pushing the boundaries, and I used to say, you do what I say because I'm your father, okay, that was enough for me. And they will say, well, what if we don't? And I say, consequences. And they say, what are the consequences? I say, that's when you find out. I've got very good kids. Okay. Sir?
I'd like to make a point about the council tax. You've got to realise that your council tax is going towards the police.
Yeah.
Not just the council, but the police and other services. The residents have got to organise themselves into the streets.
Yep.
And they have to complain via the courts that the police are not doing their job because we're paying council taxes. That means they're bogus officials, they're obtaining money and benefits by deception from the council taxpayers. We're dealing with legalised criminals.
Well, you'll notice that in my summary there that we will start to cover our own fire, our own ambulance services. Okay, you'll notice I didn't put the police on there.
Yeah.
Okay, because our communities will not be making a financial contribution to the police until they start serving our interests.
Well, the only institution I've got any confidence in is the red letterbox. I've got no respect for the toilets anymore. We've got to pay to go into them now because the European Union. I can't deposit anything in there. That's the biggest bank in the country.
Sir.
On the spiritual level, people who are at peace with themselves are not likely to commit crimes, are they?
Exactly right. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, because the bottom line is that the reason most of the crime is being committed is people are poor. People are deprived of jobs and whatever, and they've also been educated into the art of committing crime. They don't like the society they live in. They resent it. Okay, if you bring those people back with compassion and understanding, they don't want to look. You talk to some of these people, and they're actually not. It seems a silly thing to say, but they're not that bad. They're just crooks. So the whole process, people start to change. You know, if you shout at somebody, they shout back. If you talk to somebody, talk back. I can give you another example. I mean, in our street, we had a lot of kiddies in our street, and it's a road in which people like to speed. Well, I stood out in front of a car that was racing up the road, and they came to a screeching halt, right? And I went over to the window, and there's 4 young men inside, so I got down on my haunches to their level. I said, listen, guys, there's kids in the street. It really would be appreciated if you wouldn't speed up this street. And they said, yeah, all right, okay, yeah. And off they went. Now, had I said, effing blinding, blah, 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 what do you think I would have got back? Exactly. Yeah. Having said that, I've also put my hand around some of their throats, but that's another story for another time. Sir, go on.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I come from Burnley, 20% of the population left school with no qualifications.
Yeah.
That's nearly a quarter of the population. How are we going to educate these guys?
Okay, I have an idea, and it's this. If you commit a crime, right, your penance is get a GCSE. If you are in prison, you will serve as much time as it takes for you to get a GCSE. Okay? So there are ways of combine them, because if you have no education, you don't have any self-confidence, and you don't want to get a job. Okay, so that the two are combined. Look, we know all of this. We know what the solutions to the problem are. That's why I said before, we just need leaders. We just need people to... But we all know that this whole thing is about, they are trying to break society down because that is the way they control us, right? So we have got to reverse the process. Madam?
On the police thing, I worked with this young girl, and she wanted to be a policewoman because she wanted to drive cars fast. Well, I'm from the generation where, it was self-honor.
Yeah.
And these little boys were doing graffiti on the back of the bus, and I quoted Native American, which is consequences.
Yeah.
If you spit on the earth, you're spitting on yourself. And I got on the bus several weeks later, and these little boys were there telling jokes, and they were all laughing and everything. And one of them said, "You're the lady that said that." And you remembered.
Yeah.
But going back to this about education and everything, I will say, because I've worked in America and everything, you're not going to meet with the resistance you think, because actually, when things are as bad as they are, they're almost looking for somebody to get them out of the mess.
Yes,
And when you talk about education, this young man that works, he works at Grampians, he's got a wonderful education. There's all these people with education who no work, because the likes of Tesco and everything, use temps. They downsize you and they hire temps and they trade you on the stock market like pork belly.
Yeah, I think, again, is that in any decent system, and I used to have different ideas about minimum wages and all the rest of it, and I thought about this, and it seems to me that we can actually run a system in which every single individual is given a wage just to start with before they even get a job. And I'm working this whole process through because it doesn't invite people to sit on their butts. The thing is that you then don't have a government that's actually servicing their needs, but it comes from national wealth, right? So working through a few ideas that would provide a mechanism by which people have all of the basic requirements. Let me throw this idea at you, and it's part of the package. We should provide every family with free electricity, free gas, and free water, up to a certain amount, okay? That eliminates poverty straight away, okay? Secondly, if you use more than your allocated allowance, you don't pay 7 pence a unit, you pay 70 pence a unit. So the rich people will pay, right? The people who are using all the resources, okay? So to me, that makes common sense. Now, the problem, of course, is that we've passed our national assets, our national wealth, we have passed it over to corporations. They now have our national assets. Now, here am I saying, well, possibly we're talking about nationalisation of our natural resources. But that is then more government, isn't it? So clearly the thing is that it has to pass down into local communities. So local communities should own a certain proportion of the nation's wealth. And that allows each of those local communities to compete with each other as to who's best handling their affairs. So one community can share with another community the way they're doing this, that, or the other. It's true democracy. So there's lots of ideas, there's lots of solutions, and this is what the conventions are about. The conventions are about putting these ideas into play and to getting people to come back and say, well, why don't we do that? I mean, I've had one guy come to me and say, we should do this with the land. And I said, well, that's exactly what I've been thinking. And he's written a book about it. Okay, and I said, look, you're on the committee. So, and again, this idea about the land is that when you buy a house, the house would be, for example, £200,000, of which £100,000 is the land value. We strip the land value out of the price of the property because it's not going anywhere, okay? And you buy the house, which is £100,000. That brings all the new or first-time buyers into play, okay? And they only need half the mortgage they had before. Who loses out? The banks. Great system. You don't lose if you're a homeowner because when you move on to the next property, you don't have to buy the land value. Okay, there's a few things to adjust here, but that's a sound policy. It just needs some tightening up.
Wouldn't it be better, like, yes, to actually have a system where people rent rather than buy, and sort of like, that we're all on the same level, and nobody like has got, let's say, a house worth £1 million, while somebody's got a house worth 100 million, 100,000, for example.
Yeah. All right. Okay. That is communism, and I don't agree with communism because that is the state dictating. So, but what you do is there's a halfway house about some of these ideas, and I think what we have to do is we have to have that conversation. Okay, so it's work in progress. Carol, go on.
I just wanted to tell you about Tavistock. Inside Plymouth there's a little town called Tavistock, and a McDonald's built a shop, or whatever you call it, anyway, just on the edge of it.
Can everyone hear Carol?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nobody went to McDonald's. The only business they got was a few people that drove past. Within 12 months it shut down.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't hear that. I mean, Carol's story is a good one, is that in Tavistock they didn't want a McDonald's, so they didn't use it, and it closed down. And it is people power. But again, the emphasis there is its numbers. Yes.
A year later, it looked exactly the same because it was so full of preservatives that it had lasted a year.
Yeah. Penny, go on, Penny. Penny.
I haven't been a school teacher 27 years. Seeing youngsters actually their health completely deteriorate. Autism, ADHD, you name it, asthma, Ventolins. I wonder how we can encourage people to get away from the natural health service, death service. Apart from A&E, but our kids are born toxic, sick before they take almost their first breath. That's all being covered up. If we don't, and actual fact dumbs down, it's depressive, the neurotoxins are everywhere, and the mercury is, in my case, my grandmother, about 1870, 75% silver, filling 75% mercury. Cast down generations, all my descendants on that line of family died of cancer or suicide.
Yeah, well,
I just wondered how it fits in with this.
Well, Penny, what you're saying, and I again, I'm a perfect example, and I'll give you a little story which you may or may not want to hear, but you're going to get it. I actually was hospitalised 2008 November in severe pain, and they thought I had a split valve in my heart. They thought I was dead, basically. And it was excruciating. It turned out to be gallstones, and gallstones are enormously painful. So I was due to have the gall bladder removed. They're very casual about this, so I said, well, I'd talk to the surgeon. And he said to me, you don't need it. Now, that sent a lot of alarm bells ringing, okay? Because I know my body is pretty, well, not going to say, the design of our bodies is pretty damn clever. It's there for a purpose. So I decided to do some homework. Meanwhile, they booked me in three occasions in a row because I actually went back into hospital in severe pain 3 times in a row, and it really is painful. So I'd reached the decision, it's got to go, because I can't keep going through this whole process. Then I bumped into a lorry driver. This is what I like about it. And he said, oh, I've got gallstones, but I drink apple juice. And I said, tell me more. And it's the peptin in the apple juice that emulsifies the gallstones, okay? And when the gallbladder contracts, with the emulsified stones, it doesn't hurt anymore. So I cancel my operation, and I drink apple juice on a daily basis, and I have not had a single problem since then. But I then learned about purging your gallstones. And what you do is you take a big glass of pure olive oil and you drink it in the evening, and overnight it purges your gallstones. Okay, I'm not going to be very descriptive about what happens next, but I had in a little glass little gallstones, and as an experiment I then sat them in some apple juice and watched them emulsified.
Can we use this on Westminster?
The point I'm making, Penny, is this, okay, is that we have an enormous amount of knowledge amongst us all, and we need to share it. But when you go to the doctors, why wasn't the doctor telling me about this? Because they give you drugs. Exactly, okay. So it's education, it's about
The apple juice you drink every day has a very alkalizing effect on the body. That wasn't taught doctors in medical school because the drug companies don't want you to know about the basic body DNA. We are the soil. There's no element in our bodies that's not on earth. We need to be at the cellular level alkaline. Research on the internet, it's a winner. If you are seeing a magnitude of illness, including cancers and whatever else, and we really can control our own health, we need to detox and watch the electromagnetic frequency. They're designed to stop the body cells detoxing and poisoning.
It's hard to hear you, Penny, so yeah. I suggest that all of that information is something that, you know, it's a day's education, but your point is made, okay? Yeah.
Children are depressed. Toxins in the body.
Has anybody heard of, is it the Citizens Human Rights thing? Has anybody heard of that organisation? If you ring them up and ask them to send you the video about the drugs, you want to watch it because it's a real eye-opener. Psychiatry and drugs, etc. Madam, you...
Yes, because I worked in the States, I know that, like some doctors, with this girl that I worked with, she resigned because one of the doctors she worked for was getting $500,000 a year kickbacks from the drug company. And going back to the olive oil, I was in the Los Angeles earthquake, and I think it's what's in the Bible basically, because it runs the olive branch and the apple. I was in the Los Angeles earthquake, and they had to demolish 4 houses on our street. I had olive oil all over my head to condition it. And it hit at 1 a.m. And our house took the least damage. And I couldn't wash my hair for days because we know electricity. The most important thing on earth is water.
Yes.
That water tower. Without water.
Yeah, that's good. So go on.
About McDonald's, I knew in the 1980s that 1% of the gross product of McDonald's profit went to the IRA. People here are aware of it. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's lots of things that the historical things that are coming out. I mean, we've got Irish. It was Jerry Adams and Martin McGuinness were taking the money because they would go to America. The Kennedys were Irish Catholics originally. It was McGuinness and what's his name, Jerry Adams, who went to America for Kennedy's funeral a few months back.
Yeah.
And he supported the IRA. He supported planting bombs in England to kill English men, women, and children. And there's something else the press, the dim-witted press, hasn't picked up on yet. Is that those IRA men, the hatred that they felt for England and the English, it's because they'd all been sexually abused by the Irish Catholic priests.
Can I make a comment? One of the things that we find ourselves doing all the time is referring back to a lot of the negative things. We're working closely with some Irish people, okay, and their problem is the same as our problem, which is the same as the people in France, the people in Germany, and all the rest of it. The animosity amongst nations is at leadership level. These guys have created the problem. The people don't have animosity towards each other. And we should talk about the positive aspects of lawful rebellion in the sense that we want to communicate, live in a peaceful and harmonious society, not just within our country, but also, you know, with our neighbours. So that's part and parcel of what we're trying to do. So we don't want to really go down the road of dealing with the antagonisms of history, because that's not going to take us anywhere. We need to start talking about the positive things of the future. Okay, so you know.
I've been doing some work with Kevin Court there, in which I'm up now withholding tax. I'm self-employed. I'm lawfully and legally withhold tax. I'm not saying not paying it. I've got a set of criteria. They're not allowed to use my tax money to invade other countries. It's illegal. We've actually got the law. It's in black and white. Not allowed to use any depleted uranium or invade any other country. Not allowed any civilian casualties at all. Just the other week, it was in the news, can you shoot less civilians? That they're not allowed to say. They have to say, can you shoot no civilians? Not less. It's wrong.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Instead of the check going off to the tax office, I sent a letter with the law stating that I'm withholding it for this reason, and they have to accept it. They have, for them to now to ask me any money, they have to say, oh, can you break the law and pay us? They can't say right now, can they? So now, that money is in my bank account at the moment. It should be in an escrow account, is the proper way of doing it. But it's now waiting for a government, I said I will pay to governments who I agree with, who is working within the law. So, not about that issue, no.
I think one of the important points about an idea like that is it's a good idea to go through the motions, and what you're doing is brilliant, because you're trialing the system, which is in essence what I do as well, because we're going to make mistakes and we're going to have rethink. Oh, that wasn't a good thing to do. This is, as I say, it is a process. So when I challenge certain things, I go through the motions of seeing how far I can get away with it, basically. I'll give you another example in terms of doing things independently, and what I'm going to suggest to everyone is that we should not do these things independently. We should do them in groups, because it's in groups you have the protection. I had a bill from my water company. This is for my business, and they wanted £1,000 something because I have a big roof, and the water flows off my roof and goes down the drain, and they wanted to charge me for taking the water away. So originally, I said that they should send that bill to God, because it's his responsibility. And that wasn't going anywhere, because there's no really basis of the argument. But then I thought about it, and I phoned them back and said, are you telling me that water is my responsibility? And they said, yes. I said, are you telling me that therefore that I own that water? Yes, you do. I said, okay. Stop taking my water from my property, because it's theft. and take out your drains. I'll deal with my own problems. I never heard more from them. So, as perverse as it is, if you think about it, it makes sense, doesn't it? These guys are stitching us up, okay, and they're making their own rules up as they go along.
I've got a water issue. Could I just mention this?
Oh, have you? Okay, go on.
Just how many people are from the north of England here, Lancashire?
Yes.
How many people are customers of United Utilities
Yes,
Water?
yes.
Yeah.
How many people have seen this charges scheme?
No.
Not one of you?
No.
No, it doesn't surprise me. I had to apply for this. It was very, very difficult to get hold of. It's like basically the contract that you have with them, so they say, right? And it's full of skullduggery. It's absolutely... I'll just give you an example, right? The introduction, right? The company is required to ensure that its charges are such as not to show undue preference to or discriminates unduly against any class of persons. Right? Right? You know how much I pay at the moment, the money I'm on? I pay 10% of my weekly income on water. The government say...
How much do you pay? What is the figure?
I pay 10 quid a week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The government say that if you pay 10% of your weekly income on gas and electricity, you're in fuel poverty.
Yeah.
They don't even include the equation of water, right? So I'm going to write to them. I'm going to say that I will pay 10% of my weekly income on water if everybody in the country does, irrespective of income, right? Yeah. And that worries me because it could bring me into conflict in conflict with people who have got basically the same aims as me, who are on an higher income than me.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to get into conflict with people who basically have the same aims. But surely, if they say that they are not discriminating unduly against any class of person, and Ofwat have been set up to make sure that this doesn't happen, they basically said in their introduction that they've been unlawful.
Yeah.
And if I point it out to them, how can they actually get round my argument? Could anyone explain how they could be beyond that?
Well, they'll just ignore you because you're not important. I mean, that's you just pay the bill because we.
And the bottom line again is this whole argument about if you challenge them, and this is important part, that if you challenge them, you've got to be prepared to go the full hog. Okay.
Yeah.
So I am now trialling at my business a format is I've actually taken out the meter from my business premises. I have taken control of the electricity supply. Okay. Now I'm still working this one out because because we can't be irresponsible and we have to pay for our resources one way or another. But what I'm trying to do is challenge the authority of the people who say that they have a right to charge me for electricity.
I'm prepared to go to the main supplier, and I'm trying to do that at the moment. Okay, I actually went to my local rubbish removal company and said, I want to pay for you to pick up my rubbish outside my house when you pick up the council. And they said, well, we can't do that. I said, of course you can, you're a private company. Or we don't want to upset the council. I said, all right, well, in that case, well, you're picking up anyway, so I wanted to pay for it. I travelled on the train from Liverpool back to my local area there, and I travelled because I didn't get the chance to get a ticket. So when I got to the end, I walked up to the ticket master and I said, I need to pay for a fare from Liverpool to here. And the guy looked at me blankly. I said, I didn't pay at the other end. I just came up from Jeston and Underground. And the guy said, we have got no means of doing that. He said, you'll have to go. I said, are you sure? He said, yes. Now, what would they have done had I been on the train, right? And it was only a couple of quid. It was no big deal. It was no big deal. But they didn't. And they will try and fine us £20. Well, they wouldn't fine me £20. I wouldn't get away with it. But go on, Margaret, go on.
Well, I travelled from Southampton to Bournemouth. I was late getting to the station, so I got on the train without a ticket but with my money in my hand. I sat with it in my hand in the carriage all the way to Bournemouth. When I got off of Bournemouth, I went there was a checkpoint there, and I went through it, and there was a man from New Zealand standing in front of me, a briefcase, and he started to pay, and I heard him say, but that's not right, you can't do that to me. And I said, what's happening? And he explained, and they did the same to me. It was a £6 fare, and they charged me £20. And when I objected, they said, we're fining you because you didn't pay. And
well, of course,
I have my money in my hand all the time, and I'm offering it to you now for a £6 fare. And he said, we won't take it. We want £20.
Again, this is empowerment. My daughter phoned the railway and said, I'm travelling back on a day that I wasn't supposed to be travelling back. Does this ticket work? And they said, yes, it does. So she got on the train, and when she got on the train, the guardman said, that ticket doesn't work. It's £70. And of course, she phoned me there, and I said, well, tell him you're not paying the £70. Put him on the phone to me. So she said, my father wants to talk to you. And he said, no thanks. And I said, give him your name, give him your address, do not give him any money. Okay. We then got the letter back from the railway station, from the railway service, and I wrote a letter saying that they told my daughter something that was untrue. They then humiliated her in public, and I wanted compensation, and I was going to see them in court. That was the last we ever heard of them. So they can't fine you £20. Okay, it's unlawful to do so. So when everybody tries to give you a fine, an arbitrary fine, tell them your name, tell them your address, and give me a call, and I'll tell you what to tell them to do, okay? Politely, of course. Can we just cover this water thing, right? The water issue is going to be a big one, and I believe that what we need together is to bring people together with the water. I'm challenging the water people. At the moment, I'm very tempted to sort of fill concrete over my meter, but I think that's going a bit too far. I'm not paying my water bill at my business premises. What we often find ourselves in conflict with is other family members. Okay, so it's not always practicable to do that. So it's only when there's a major issue. Now, what I suggest that we do with water is pay them a proportion of it. Okay, pay them 10% of it, for example. And you say that this is a fair and reasonable proportion of the bill. I can't afford any more. If you're not happy, take me to court. Now, if they want to take you to court, and this is another thing, again, the banks. I wrote to my banks and said, I do not owe you any money, politely. And that was the end of it. Now, I've actually, again, this is the whole, we all understand the digital process, that the way they create money is they just put it on the screen, don't they? It's a digital process. Well, that's how they've done it with my bank account. My position with my bank account is this, that is it my bank account? Yes or no? If they say yes, I say, well, give me control of it, right? Because I will digitally remove the debt on the bank account. If they won't do that, it's obviously not mine, is it? It's theirs. Okay. So my position is, well, if it's your bank account, will you digitally remove it? And I've said to them, have I taken any money from you? If I have, there must be a contract. If it's a digitally enhanced number, then digitally remove it, right? And they don't reply. The point is that they have got no means of getting that digitally enhanced money from me whatsoever. They've tried. Now, when they pass it over to the debt collectors, the people phone you, and the first thing they will say is, can we just ask you some security questions, please, Mr. Hayes? No. Will you go into a Lloyd's bank to discuss this? No. Will you reply to letters? I already have done so. No. Do you know what they do then? Nothing. They are powerless. Okay. So on things like the water, right, we need to have a strategy, and I think what you should do is you should send them a small amount, and then we'll teach you about the legal fiction. Now, has anybody in this room heard about the legal fiction? Does everyone, can anybody explain a legal fiction? Hands up if you can explain a legal fiction. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So this is an important point, because knowing about something and actually being able to explain it is another thing. Now, what we find is going into the courts is that the magistrates don't know what a legal fiction is. Okay. So you're talking to the judges do, and the point is that we had an episode yesterday. Yeah. The thing I discovered, and if you know your business, right, they will try and close you down. They'll try and shut you up quite quickly. But if you're not quite sure of your legal fiction scenario, a guy phoned me yesterday and he said, I've just been in court, and do you know what? the district judge didn't know what a legal fiction was. I said, what did he ask you? He said, oh, what's a legal fiction? Tell me about this legal fiction. And this district judge said to him, I've had 5 people do this on me now. Oh, we're making an impact, don't you worry. And I said to him, he's trying to set you up. He knows damn well what a legal fiction is. He's just going to see whether you know what it is. And then he said, the judge said to him, do you know what a protection order is? Does everybody know what a protection order is here? It's health and it's the Mental Health Act. He's setting him up to section him. Yeah. Right? He's actually worked out that the guy doesn't really know his stuff, and he said, I'm adjourning this case. You come back into my court. You call it my court with me. I'll be up there. But the bottom line is, this guy this judge told him that you come back in as the person, his name, and you have a solicitor. And he's going to make him have a solicitor. So he's actually he's trying to do the old common purpose bit, dominate him. So the guy phoned me up. He said, "What shall I do?" I said, "Well, you are being set up, so you've got to be prepared to go either all the hog or not go in there." Because John Harris, of course, won't go in there. He won't submit to their authority at all. And that is one way to play. So there's 2 sides of this. Is either you go the legal fiction route, but you know what you're doing. But again, this is the conversation that we've got to have: is what tactics we use, when to use them, and if you're going to use a legal fiction process, you generally need to know what you're doing.